Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Let's go. Master of all things tabletop. With the Paladins of Podcast. They ruin the games you love by talking rules that suck, how to build kick-ass encounters, destroy worlds, and really get your players invested. So go ahead and throw that fistful of dice at someone. Because we're going on a side quest.
For some reason, I was looking at the wrong button.
Nice.
All right. I have started recording.
Cool beans.
How are you doing today, Rob?
Not too bad. Trying to survive this cold that I'm afraid I've picked up from my kids last week. So it's always fun having to deal with that. How about yourself?
Much better than that. Do you drink like emergency? I always called it fuzzy tea. That always helped me when I'm feeling sick.
No, I don't, but I do like it. And a lot of times if I start to feel a little yucky, I generally do down a whole bunch of vitamin C by some degree. But it hit me, I want to say last night, and I just didn't feel like moving at all. So I ended up sleeping most of the day.
You're having quite a lot of downtime.
Yes. And you wanted to see how we handled downtime today. Right.
Yeah, it was something I wanted to talk about. I was kind of curious how you like to run your cities. Because cities can be I feel like they can be their own. I mean, you can put so much details into them. They can be their own adventure in itself. So how do you plan enough inside a city so that the players can get a feel of that city without it being a whole adventure in itself?
Sure. And downtime activities are something that I've started to do recently. Usually when we're playing, everything is essentially considered like active game time. And what I've done now is, because we're taking time to build a slower campaign, when the party has nothing going on in between sessions, we don't always pick up from the same spot. It's not, we end at 10 minutes, so we pick up at 10 minutes and 1 second. Sometimes we pick up 3 days and 10 minutes later. And when we get together, we use downtime rules found in Ultimate Campaign from Pathfinder's books. And it's got a pretty decent setup. I'm not super pleased with a lot of it because it seems to be geared towards, at times, things like buying and selling trade goods or kingdom building, etc. But through a few other third-party rules that encompass things like factions and kingdom building and intrigue, I kind of mesh them into the downtime rules. So when we start, when there has been downtime, we do a few quick rolls and checks to see how successful they were on doing things that they wanted to do, such as spreading rumors, collecting information, getting the heads up on certain events, being first to know, kind of give them leads for things to follow.
What kind of information does this downtime typically get the players? Like, tangibly, does it give them money? Is it a way for you really just to seed plot hooks for the party?
Both. They can use the downtime roles to essentially hold some form of employment, whether it be skilled labor or unskilled labor. That determines on how much they get per role that they make. The information that they may get sometimes may be plot hooks that are relevant to what they're trying to do. Sometimes it's just other plot hook style information if they want to follow another lead. So sometimes they may be looking for a specific tidbit of information that deals with their current mission, and sometimes they might end up with information that's not relevant at all. They might hear some fishy information about some random attacks on an individual that they can choose to look further into or not. So I use it as a...
How often do players do, like, is there one of those actions that they primarily take, or are they using the entire, like, all the options available?
Depending on what they want to do will determine on what actions they want to take. So sometimes it's like, I've got the D20 PFSRD pulled up, so we have a little bit quicker reference here. They can gain capital purchased or earned. They roll then if they want to do either one of those. Like sometimes it's I want to earn some money, sometimes I want to do some sort of trade for certain things. If they want to go that route, those players will roll. And if they're not interested, they don't have to roll those. I don't make everybody rolling everything. The one structure I keep to it is the phases. So that's upkeep, any costs associated with maintaining and completing sort of like the building zones and organizations that they have to maintain financial responsibility or dues for. So a lot of times
Are your players at a campaign level? Like, are they buying and selling property or anything? Or
one of my players in one of my campaigns always consistently is trying to do so. And it's been something that some of my players who have more of a merchant style background are always looking to handle and do as well. So having that opportunity in here, especially during downtime, allows me to give it to them without bogging down the game for everybody else, just so I can handle this with them. And then, yeah, just upkeep activity, income, and events. So that structures seem to work out really well. Easy to manage, easy to follow. And to avoid giving all my players all that information in like information overload style, I have done up a small little cheat sheet that I can give them. Like, hey, this is your downtime activity. This is kind of what's going on if you want to go that route. So
awesome. That seems like a really great way to run it.
It's not bad. I don't think it's perfect, but so far it's not bad.
How are you liking the, like, how big of skips are you taking, and or is it after every session, or is it only every once in a while?
It's not after every session. It's I'd say every once in a while. And the amount of time between active campaigning versus downtime and in between sessions can range anywhere between, I think the most I've had is 12 days and as little as a day and a half. So they have, in those longer stretches of downtime, they have more opportunities to do things, more normal life things. Also applies into, not applies into, but also plays into other mechanics that I'm utilizing, things like renown or their sanity and their addiction levels.
So last time, I think we talked about some elements of episodic campaigns. Mm-hmm. Were you using this opportunity to do that, where when you cut 12 days, that 12 days opens into action, essentially? Like you're always hot dropping into a quest?
No.
Okay.
No, sometimes when we come back after an extended period of time, say the 12 days, we'll end up right at the crest of certain information that will allow them to push forward in their certain goals. For instance, right now, they're trying to hunt down a powerful merchant who is essentially the bad guy from one specific player's backstory. And they can't get access to him because his financial wealth is too far outside of their scale. So they're doing what they can to keep an eye on him from a distance, keep following him, keeping a track, keeping a line on him, before he ends up going back and doing his thing. So it's interesting now that we have the downtime activities, because things happen in between versus constantly being in an active campaign status.
Have you ran any events in the downtime? You said that was the third phase.
Yeah, so it's usually unusual events, and what I do is sometimes I'll have kind of like small missions that the parties will just end up going on, and they'll roll to see if it was a success or failure and what degree that was. And because I'm having them start off as, I use the term neighborhood heroes, similar to Spider-Man. That's where when they're successful in those small events, they're doing things like looking into small time robberies or just trying to stop a local group of hoodlums from trashing a storefront, things like that, that don't require an entire session dedicated to small events. Other than that, sometimes they will get the information of larger scale things, such as a city just outside of the current location's boundaries that they could go do a mission. I'm trying not to give too much away here because one of my players does listen to this. One of my Saturday players listens.
That's all right. That's all right. I guess when you run these, do you roll it all up at the table, or do you have it prepared and kind of hand it out to the players? Do they gain asymmetrical information from these events?
Yes, they do gain asymmetrical information. Some of it is handed out depending on what player finds out what, because they don't always function as a party. Like, they're not always glued to each other's hips. And then a lot of information they do find out at the same time, depending on what it is. So I like to think of it as campaign information that applies to everybody. They get one time, small tidbits of information through the downtime activities. They'll generally get more individualistically because they are on more of an individual goal. It's not bad. You seem to be thinking.
No, I like it. I like it. I'm always trying to come up with other ways of feeding individual members of the party more information. I feel like that makes it feel like, I mean, each information you're feeding the party feels more unique for one player to have it, and then to kind of share it, kind of gives mutual ownership over adding pieces of information to the world.
Absolutely agree. How do you generally handle your downtime activities?
A lot of the downtime activities, because I have a party that enjoys role playing, we will end up moving through them, and we will take some larger jumps. And when we do that, we usually, every session we start with like a 15-minute like warm up role playing session.
Yep.
And so we'll use those elements to kind of flash back into large time jumps and fill it in with small interactions between each of the individual characters.
Nice. And that's something that, because of you, I've also started doing is we call them our campfire moments.
How's that going for you?
I really like it. My players are having a kind of I don't want to say a rough time grasping the idea of what it is or how to utilize it. So I've explained it to them like, guys, this is just a no roll moment for you to be able to just ease into role play. Pick some point in the past whether you had downtime and just role play and make it up. Like, it could be any mission that you make up, anything that's going on, just kind of ease into it. My newest group, my contingency heroes, as they've decided to name themselves, have really jumped into it, and it's incredible. My first group, Twisted Justice, they are still trying to kind of get the hang of it. So, but it's cool.
Do you typically bring any ideas to the table about where to start an idea on?
Sometimes I have, depending on if they seem to be having a really rough go at it. But a lot of times they kind of get hung up on what my character looks like versus what the role playing aspect. So it's kind of, we generally get updates on what everybody's character looks like way more often than them just role playing. It's kind of entertaining.
Okay, so they mainly focus on describing themselves and then rather than role playing. Interesting. Yeah. You could also drop the just starting with a description.
Yeah, we could. I like it because I think I mentioned one of my contingency hero players, and a small route that I took this past Saturday that debating if it was the best route. But there was deific intervention and a physical change. So now when he comes back, he is physically changed.
All right, you're unsure about it. Let's talk about it.
Okay. So because I don't want to give too many details away.
Stop listening for now, huh?
Yeah, but we can do it without giving away all the juicy details. I had previously written some lore for the area in which the contingency heroes are in the area they're in, their physical location. One of those bits of lore is that a long time ago, there was a giant kingdom that had settled in the area, and there was an uprising, and it's called the Neophyte Uprising. So pretty much just a bunch of apprentices, lowly individuals. They fought against the giants and won. One of the ways that they did this was, at the time, somebody had been able to come up with a sphere of annihilation. And the sphere of annihilation got left in some tunnels that had been abandoned, caved in, stone-shaped in the Obsidian Mountains. So as my party was adventuring through these mountain caverns, they found a small illusion covering the sphere of annihilation. Now, the cover was not there to hide the sphere of annihilation, but as a marked reminder of, hey, this is where the sphere of annihilation is.
Don't walk into this area.
Yes. And the description was, because it's all obsidian, black glass rock, they had seen a 12 by 12 square inch, essentially cinder square. So it was a different color, different material. It looked physically different. The only time it looked different than anything else. The individual who can identify magic identified the illusion magic, and he identified the, I believe it's necromantic energy from the sphere. I told him you could disbelieve in the illusion. Like, once you know it's an illusion, you do not have to believe it's actually there. And he didn't do that right away, even though I explicitly said it's possible. And our player who made the mistake, after everything I kind of gave them, I told them there's a trail of blood that leads up right to this exact area, and everything just stops. It's just gone. Like, hard line stops. And he walks up and he pokes it with his sword. Well, once you interact with this sphere of annihilation, you get sucked in. No reflex save, no nothing. Just gone, dead.
Boom.
Yes. And I asked him, I said, all right, this is going to suck. So do you want a little bit of flexibility, or do you just want to go rules as written? I gave him the opportunity. I figured an option, I can wiggle because he touched it with his sword. Maybe, even at a 2-foot distance, maybe he was able to let go of his sword with a fast enough reflex save, or he stumbles out of the way as it tries to pull him in.
Yeah, I think as a flexible point, I probably would have had like the tip of the sword, shear off, or just disappear when he pulls it back. Right. There's totally room for flexibility.
Right. But he rolled a 6 on his reflex save. And the devastation of a sphere of annihilation really shouldn't be negated with a 6 on a check. So he got sucked in. Got sucked in. He was gone. And it took the players a second to realize what it is. And even knowing, some of them are like, I'm pretty sure my character would jump in after him. I'm like, this is exactly how most people lose an entire party in the Tomb of Horrors, because they don't understand what the sphere of annihilation is. They'll just jump in. And I didn't expect them to really hit that. And
they all jumped in.
No, they decided not to. What they did do, they decided to go back and tell somebody, and they met 2 people that instantly came to their mind. One of them is a bad guy who threatened to kill them if they ever set foot in his presence again, because of how they screwed up when they went. I think I told you about that. They screwed up the job bad. Yeah. That's the guy. They're like, we can go tell him. Like, this would be great. And I got to tell you, my heart sank, because if he had access to it, it would have like instantly ruined a whole lot of backstory for a whole lot of people because now we have this very vindictive character
with a sphere of annihilation.
Yes. And they told another person that they just met who was in general an incredibly powerful individual, Cthulhu-esque. And I didn't plan on making him much more than just sort of like a throwaway NPC, kind of weird, kind of like an eerie space traveler.
Okay.
But in the end, he's the one that was able to interrupt our character. His name is Harold. Not the player, the character's name is Harold. Harold's complete annihilation through deific intervention.
So this Cthulhu-esque character reached out to their god, and their god intervened in this person's death?
No. This Cthulhu-esque character had the power to change it.
Wild.
Yeah, and
what is it going to cost? Was it just the price of knowing where a sphere of annihilation is?
No, the rest of the party had actually ended up telling this character, this NPC, the Cthulhu-esque character, where the sphere of annihilation is. And he's like, I've kind of been looking for one of these things, and he willed it up out of the ground and he sent it somewhere else. And he said, I'm sure it's going to return. Like the Abyss has a big problem with certain things like this just hanging around. Like we force it out eventually. But the price of it is actually currently unknown to the extent. Right now, he has an entirely massive symbol, which actually happens to be of Cthulhu, burned into his face. And because I'm not playing Cthulhu as, or the idea or the mythos specifically as Cthulhu mythos itself, modified on for the world, he either is a subconscious, intelligent being style of version who is exploring the worlds, looking for the next one to destroy, having some entertainment along the way. Or he is just the herald of the greater danger to forecome later. But I have to play it carefully because depending on how they push it, it changes quite a bit of what's going to happen in the world. So now with Harold being back, he is, I don't want to say imbued with a form of chaos, but anytime he casts a spell, there is also a random table he gets to roll on for random misfortunate mishaps that may also occur. So, for instance, let's say he does something like cast Firebolt, which is a line of fire. It may also include a trail of octopus-like tentacles that lash out at everything in its way. Just to constantly always not give him more power, but to really show him something's kind of screwed up.
How many powerful NPCs like this do the players interact with?
This is
is this character unusual or?
Yes, this character was an anomaly that I decided to put in initially, just so I could set up. And I shit you not, dude. Just so I could set up like a dinner theater. Like
a dinner theater?
Yeah. So he's called the Playwright, and nobody knows anything about him other than he takes history and lore from the world, and he puts on a stage production for people to watch. And as you're watching the stage production, you end up physically seeing it, and then through incredibly strong, non-harmful magic, you pass out and you get to experience it as though you're there.
Non-harmful magic. The way you said that, it's almost like I was like, "Are you speaking for the Playwright?"
A little
totally
bit.
Non-harmful magic, not harmful in the slightest.
A little bit. And I used him in that aspect because I wanted to give them some information and lore about the world. And I thought it would be fantastic if they knew things like legends and stuff from farther out beyond the borders that they're not familiar with. So it made sense to kind of develop this character who had also picked up a trick from an oracle, and the oracle trick was essentially like fortune telling, hand reading, palm reading, and our Cthulhu-esque character here became Cthulhu-esque when he said, "I would like to try this, and let me see your hands." And as he brought the character's hands to his mouth, a mouthful of tentacles full of saliva just spilled out and wrapped around their hands, and he was essentially tasting their fortune and future and past to get a reading on them so they could tell them something.
Wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot to give your players some backstory. So they essentially, why did they trust this character so much to tell them all this information?
Because he was incredibly honest with them at first, and because he was also super powerful.
Cool.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they gave him the Spear of Annihilation versus the other guy.
Do you think that this Cthulhu-esque character could become a patron of the party's activities, or how do you want to leverage this relationship that they're forming with this character?
I'm not sure yet, and my concern is him being so powerful, and the nature of Cthulhu mythos overall is not a super central part of the game or the world. Like, I had never really intended on including it. It just happened to make sense to kind of go that route. And
what elements have you so far introduced that are did you call this character a worshiper of Cthulhu, or have you just described them in a tentacled, mysterious, ancient evil way?
Yes. Tentacle, ancient evil, and then my thought was definitely tracking. I said, after I described him as this type of character, he would be a Cthulhu-esque style character, and I want to bring the horror aspect of the Lovecraftian mythos in, and it fits in the world because they also have the overseer of the city that they're in to deal with. They're in the city of Fence. The overseer, his name is Cyro Kane, you're familiar with the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland? Imagine him as a absolute evil, vile human being, like a cat man, essentially.
All right.
That is who this...
Easy to picture, actually.
Good. That's who this guy is. And when they messed up the job with Goonie, Cyro Kane got word from it, and he invited them in and said, "We can't let you guys go. Usually we would just murder you, but Goonie chose not to, because nobody knows about our city. The only people who know about our city are those who either stay or come back and know not to tell anybody. It's hidden for a reason. So you are free captives. You can stay here, and if we can't trust you to leave, we can't trust you to not say anything. You're stuck. And I suggest you get on board with the way things are in Fence." And they're like, "Okay, not too bad." Then the following morning, they watched him murder somebody who just simply disrespected him. And he did so by controlling his attendant, who is described as a very tall, we're talking 9 to 10 foot tall, lanky, imp-like creature with long arms, legs, and torso that walks crouched over all the time. So he only appears to be 3 or 4 feet tall, but that's only because he's so compacted himself. Cyro had his hand in the back of his attendant's neck, controlling him like a puppet, as he was breaking this individual in half on the banister of the Alakazar, which is the castle of Fence, over the banister. And after breaking him in half, letting his body drop to the bottom of the floor. And then Cyro had a speech prepared for the citizens about how he refuses to be disrespected and how he doesn't generally get involved with the politics. But if he does, it's not going to work out for anybody. I mean, if 2 people argue and they can't resolve it, they're going to be 2 free beds in Fence. So getting the idea of what kind of person he is kind of led that what kind of other people would flock to this area. But in a background here is that Fence is also in a period of change. So it's no longer just a city for thieves and rogues and assassins. It's also a city of refugees, people who have no place to go. They're on the run from everything. With my player characters trying to be heroes, the idea is maybe they can help cultivate this positive change in Fence, where it's a little bit more welcoming but still hidden, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do they have anything yet that is their driving force, or is it just to be heroes?
Right now, it's really just to kind of survive and find work. Excuse me, you can't see it on their board, but their current goals are find housing and don't die.
Admiral goals.
Yep. And I figured after their rough start on their very small session 0 game, after their rough start, I wanted to give them opportunity to find some good things. So they made some friends, they made some positive connections. So it's not just a horrible experience for them in Fence.
How did the player handle their character? Like, how much actual time happened between their character dying and being returned, and how did the player receive it? Because this is session 1 character death.
It was a session 1 character death, which is partially why I felt so damn weird about it. Oh, by the way, I mean, the player himself had walked in and said, "If I die, it's okay." On session 1, first thing he said, it's okay if I die, which I thought was weird. It's funny, but shit. Anyhow, right now an
vision board, I guess.
Right. Right now, an indeterminate amount of time has passed. It happened at the end of the session, and they'll wake up in the morning, I'm pretty sure, with Harold being back.
Do the players know that Harold is alive?
No, not right now.
What has this character been thinking for the last week? Did you tell him to bring a new character?
No. He knows that his character's coming back. But I did send him a message privately about kind of the realization of acute nothingness. He was absolutely, his awareness was still conscious of the nothingness he was experiencing, the lack of physical body, the lack of consciousness. When he finally returns to the world of the living, he has this memory of a void, absolute nothing. And the painful reality that it is absent of everything. We'll see how that works. He initially asked if he could play something if he came back, something that was split personality. And I said, please, no, that's too complicated. I don't want to go that route.
So I guess my big question is, why didn't you just let him die?
It was session 1. And even though he was okay with it, I hate a death on session 1. And as soon as he died, I had seen some unforeseen benefits of story hooks by allowing it to go this route that I wanted to explore and have fun with. Like I said, I had never anticipated for a Cthulhu-esque character, but now I also see how it could be really entertaining in this world, because you're familiar with essentially what I call the end game, how there's no real big bad evil guy, there's a moral decision at the end. It's things that are already set up kind of prime it for somebody to destroy the world way before anything happens. So now I get to say they can either stop that, and I'm populating the world essentially with threats, like evil threats that they can subvert, they can change, they can stop, all to make that end goal, that end decision 100 times harder.
Interesting. Do they have any solid allies yet? I guess it's one session in, so
besides the playwright, who isn't even a solid ally, he's just somebody who gifted them something incredible. They lost a friend. One of their friends already died. They made a friend and he died, which was funny. He wasn't supposed to be a friend. He was just supposed to be fodder. And they made an acquaintance who seems pretty solid, but they haven't explored a friendship building with them yet. So what's nice is that all of them take notes, and all of their notes are pretty thorough and in depth. So as they read back through their notes, they're able to pick up and keep pushing forward.
I think it's funny that you won't kill someone on session 1, I think that's the best time to kill someone. You've got the lowest amount of investment in the character, and you can start off being like, yeah, I'll kill your character. And then you can back off later, but the fear of death is there.
Yes, and that's one thing I've been struggling with. I'm like, damn it, did I make the right decision? But I've already started down this path, and now I gotta correct in a way that makes sense for the world. So it's I don't know if I fucked up. I don't think I did, but I definitely can see how I may have.
I think you're also only one session in, so you can't really mess it up too bad.
Right.
You have a lot of time to develop around it and build it. So.
Yes. And I think it's really cool because I'm out of contingency heroes. One of my players is also a very archaeologist, Indiana Jones style character, looking for information on ancient lore. So this provides him an opportunity to hunt down certain things. So I get to develop tidbits for him, and then I get to flesh them out, which helps develop the rest of the history of the world. Which, speaking of,
that's perfect for all your world building.
Yeah. And speaking of like history of the world, I hate building a timeline, Eli. It sucks. Like, damn.
Yeah.
That's the worst part about it.
Well, how much do you populate the timeline, right? Because you can only populate it when you need to.
Right. But because of how I built the world, like the first 37 years of Animar are pretty well active. Outside of that, I mean, I mentioned that there was a war between the Giants' Kingdom and everybody else. Well, now that has to go in the timeline. And then certain other events have to feed into that timeline. And I don't want to cram them all into a group of like a 10-year block. I need it spread out. It's just weird. I've never really gone that route before.
Let the dice do the talking. Just roll.
I could. I haven't done it that way, so I'm like, I'll give it a try. Screw it, why not?
Because then, I mean, especially for like if you're talking about a war, having a random start and end date can dramatically change the war, or in the length or its scope.
That's true. That's true. They did find one of the most obscure bits of information, which I thought was
obscure
fun.
Information is great.
Yeah. So in the history of the world, and it's a legend, it's lore, people don't believe it actually happened, but a large dragon ended up burning the mountains. The Bayreen Mountains is what the ashlands are formed around. Burning them, scorching them for 7 years straight. And that's what turned them into glass obsidian.
That's a lot of fire.
Yes. And it's a huge area. Everybody thinks that the legend is not true. Everybody thinks that it's false or fake. But every now and then, if you're walking through the tunnels, you can feel radiant pockets of warmth and kind of like a rumbling, a resonant vibration through the glass rock. That sounds like a deep, low growl. People have just passed it off as wind or something moving through the mountains. That's
a great little detail.
Yeah.
You can really add some character.
Yes. There's fun. I got his man. Yeah. My players really can't listen to this shit. I got that history all written up too. Like, what happened, who it is, how it came to be, the whole deal. And
now,
yeah.
Do any of your players know any of this, any of this lore?
The truth of it? No, they only have the tidbits of information. They've got the, this is what I've heard, but I don't know if it's true or not. So
would you ever consider like giving out a lore book to your players or having them read through some of the settings details?
Yes. In fact, I don't have my folder right here with me, but when they find out if certain lore is true or not, they're going to get a page for their folder. So they'll have the whole actual lore, the history of it, what happened, what went down. And one of the things that I'm excited about is one of my players has a background where he said he was adopted from a samurai. And I was like, shit, I had a great idea for this. So The history on his adoptive father spans into a life that he never knew. Like, this adopted kid had no idea. And I've already started laying the seeds down for finding that information out. And the lore there is that his father was essentially a chosen assassin, like a god of death kind of assassin from an area in the world. And finally, he got fed up with the lifestyle. And so on his very last mission, which was against the emperor of the area that he was in, he gave him his samurai mask, his menpo, and told him, I said, tell the world how I died tonight, how you bested the, I forgot what I named him right off the top of my hand, but how you bested the god of death. And when he did that, the emperor became known as the God Emperor, who had magical supreme powers, because this guy had never been killed before, never bested. And my player was adopted by the kid, not the kid, but the guy who was supposedly died. All right, I'm laying these seeds down, and we're having some fun with this. And now I'm really excited for them to get the piece of lore. And it's all tied. I swear I might be playing this one a little too tight. I have something written up for the character. And the only way he's going to get it is when he mentions that he's cleaning his sword, because it's stuck.
Interesting.
It's stuck in a hideaway in his scabbard, in his katana sheath. It's a stealth. I forget exactly what it's called, but there's a stealth pocket.
It's like a little smuggler's compartment.
Yes. And there's a letter to him in there, and he's carrying it around. He has no idea. And because he's not in the area in which that sword is famous for, he's got no idea what he's walking around with either. Like, the sword is called, from the area, is the Sword of Heaven. That is what this shit does. If he ever ends up in that area, like, there's shit that goes down with that as it is. And I'm really excited about that.
That's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. Now I'm thinking about ways I could try to steal that idea. I have several characters in my game that are absent-minded, which means anytime that they leave an area or journey out, there's a chance that they might just leave something behind. And it's actually a little advantage to having a virtual tabletop is, between sessions, or I can just go in and make some modifications. Like, I can go to an item and put missing. Which do you have access to their character sheets in those folders?
Most of them leave them here. Some of them take them with them, which I don't mind, but I have asked that they at least leave them here a little bit so I can take a look at their character sheets and figure out all of what their characters can do, because I want to make sure to utilize all of their characters' abilities. I don't ever want them to run into a situation where they're useless for 3 months of real time. I want them to be able to use everything they think is cool. So most of them leave them here.
That's valuable. That means you have access to them too.
Yes. And what's really nice is that, similar to how you can kind of go back in and modify a few things, I've got an envelope system where I drop a note card and I'll drop it in their envelope with their folder, so they can read certain information, etc. It's entertaining. It's fun. I really enjoy doing that.
You've only been in one session, so have you utilized those yet, or are you using those for your other games as well?
I use them for my other game as well. What I've found that are super interesting and entertaining for me, the sessions here that had a short play game. This is the one where contingency heroes really screwed the pooch on Goonie, the rat folk who was trying to find them jobs or work. I gave one of my characters like an additional 500 or 600 experience for playing his character so well in the way of creating such a problematic scenario. Like, that was in vein with his character from A to Z, 100%. So I definitely used a lot of it for handing out bonus experience when they're acting accordingly to either their character or really supporting the world in a way that fits them and the world. I also utilize it to drop off mysterious items that they just happen to get. And they get mysterious items by taking really detailed notes in a very specific format. Like, instead of handing out bonus experience for notes, I reward them with third-party magical items.
I assume since you're handing out individual experience, you only gain experience if you're there that day?
No, there's a group experience that you get per game as well. And so that applies to everybody, whether they're there or not, to keep everybody on the same level. The advanced experience reward is just to help reinforce things that I'd like to continue to see from their characters. So positive reinforcement.
How is there any one player that has like a vastly larger amount, or is anyone pulling ahead, or do they just like is it a one session difference in leveling up?
So far, it hasn't even been a single session difference in leveling up. I want to say that overall, the most I've handed out in one time was 600 experience, and then on average, it's between 200 to 300 experience, depending on how far they go into their character-ness, for a better word.
Is experience a good reward in that situation then?
I believe so, because giving them the experience allows them to say, yes, this will push my character towards faster development if I continue providing, if I continue to roleplay the way my character would be. So, and it's not every time. So they have to really go above and beyond.
No, I feel like it's since they're not. I do hear that it's giving it's incentivizing that activity, but it's not really giving much of a reward. Have you thought about giving more like one-use abilities or actions, like your ability or whatever you did last session has earned you a new contact or this item, that since you are giving them this cards, right? You are able to use time to think on these abilities between sessions.
Yes. And I've been utilizing some of those examples in other ways, contacts, etc., items. Or one of my favorites is I also reward hero points in the occasion that I simply tell my players, no, they're not going to be able to do something. So if I say, no, you're not going to be able to do that right now, and because I'm forcing that no, I'm going to reward them with a hero point because I'm changing what they want to do for the improvement of the whole story. Which that to me feels very railroad-esque, but they don't mind the hero point. And I haven't had to hand out very many right now. So it's worth it. But you're right.
Interesting.
When I do give them the additional experience, I do tell them exactly what they did to earn that experience, so they know exactly how it worked. The first time I used it, for example, was within Twisted Justice. One of my players decided that he was going to go see the slums full of poor people and throw around the idea that he was going to pay people for information, and he's not being quiet or hush-hush about it. So he was mobbed by a bunch of homeless people, and instead of fighting back, which he normally would do, not the character, but the player would normally do, he would just slaughter them all. He decided to flee. Not draw a weapon, not do anything. He just fled. So I rewarded him with bonus experience points. Like, hey, sometimes you learn a really tough lesson. This lesson kind of sticks with you, and you did what you felt your character would do, and it was a good move. So rewarded that behavior. But we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I know we're a little over time right now, and we wanted to talk about one last thing. Did we want to try to push that into next week?
Yeah, we could push into next week or chat about it now. Either works for me.
Well, everybody knows that we stick to about 45 minutes, and with the way I've been feeling, I'd like to be able to kind of curtail soon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's leave it on the cliffhanger. And it's also give us some time to pull out some examples. All right,
There's lots of them out there.
Hell yeah, there are. All right, guys. Paladins, the podcast. Rob and Eli. We went an entire 48 minutes without introducing ourselves this time.
And I'm getting a new cat.
Congratulations. I love cats.
Hang on in there.
What kind of cat are you getting?
It's a temporary cat. I have a friend who's moving to Australia. And so while they get like a cat passport, they're going to be in Australia, so they have to wait the months. So going to have a cat for about 5 months.
That's going to be fun. Congratulations.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
Wonderful. What if you enjoy the new cat? All right.
Yabba dabba doo.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Check us out, epictablegames.com.
Have a good day.
Okay, new intro. We've changed the name, and we're still using the word paladin. Paladin. I mean, it hasn't been used in the English language in about 200 years, but okay.